the path that I've set you on, so I'm going to give you people to make sure that you have everything you need. He gives them basically a whole army of people to take care of them, all these servants. And then he says, now, although I've given you this land and all these possessions and all these people to take care of you, and here's a shocking thing, and it's amazing because it mentions it 4 times. I want you to eat at my table. Now, for us, that doesn't really mean anything. I mean, if President Obama called you tomorrow and was like, hey, dude, or girl, whatever, hey, you want to come over and eat at my table, at my place? You know, come on over to the White House. I got you. Come on by, hang out. That would be a little more like, whoa, really? What's going on? Is it important? He's like, I'm the king. Everything I do is important. But I want you at my table every day. Now, think about this. What would David's kind of criticizers, his naysayers, say about this? When he has someone from the previous reign of a previous king that wanted him dead, wanted to kill him, tried to murder him at his own table, and he says, now, I want this crippled young man of the king that hated and despised me to come and eat at my table. He would get incredible ridicule. Okay? So David not only has this amazing commitment, he demonstrates it by this amazing sacrifice of giving him land, giving him not only amazing wealth, but giving him everything he needs to maintain that wealth, and then giving him privilege and position in his life. He brings him to a place of intimacy. Mephibosheth, take your seat at my table. This is crazy. He takes this man and exalts him, sits him at his right hand, and treats him as a son. And then, this is my favorite part, verse 11 and 12, or 12 and 13. And it says this, and Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah, and all who lived in Ziba's house became Mephibosheth's servants. So Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, for he ate always at the king's table. Now he was lame in both his feet. Okay, did you guys catch how amazing this is? Probably not. Okay, did you catch that he had a son? Because I was in there. So it says, and Mephibosheth had a young son. How many crippled guys do you think had young sons at that time? None. Culturally, Mephibosheth had just been redeemed. He had been taken where he was in a prior position. Understand, where was he at one time? He was the son, or the grandson, and then to be the son of the king. Right? His father was killed. He was dropped and ruined. He was broken and battered. David took him and restored him to be the son of the king that could have a lineage of his own. A man that would not have been able to have a life, a lineage, a property, possessions, servants, now had been redeemed. And then I love that it closes where it says, he lived in Jerusalem, for he ate always at the king's table. Now he was lame in both feet. Now why would it say now he was lame in both feet? That's got to be important. You read that and it's like, well, yeah, I read that earlier. He's crippled. Why are you saying that again? You guys see the tension there? He's saying, although he's been redeemed, he's still broken. He's still crippled. He still can't walk. But yet he's been made the son of a king and restored in all ways. but he's still broken. We look at David and we look at his sacrifice that he made. We look at the commitment that he's made. Do you guys, when you read this, because when I read this, the first thing I thought of was looking at David, and I went, man, that commitment just points to me towards it's this foreshadowing of the commitment of God. I mean, think about this. David made a commitment to take care of this man. God made a commitment. The minute sin entered the world through Adam and Eve, he made a commitment to provide a redeemer. God made a commitment, and he sent angels, he sent prophets and priests, and he sent kings and judges. He actually so humbled himself that even at that time, he constrained himself to come and live in a temple among the people. Then he came and he humbled himself in an absolute manner and took on flesh and lived amongst the people. Do we think about the commitment of God? Because here's the thing, guys. How often do we, in our lives, in our day-to-day walk, do we go, oh, I have to try harder, do better. I got to be able to somehow grasp onto God, that my effort, my leaning into life will somehow draw me closer to God. I need to be more committed. Or do we go, I just am in awe of God's commitment to be close to me? How often do we put it on backwards? I have to be committed to God. No. When you look at this story, did a counselor come to David and say, remember your commitment to Jonathan? Did Jonathan come and say, hey, I'm the grandson of the king, you owe me something? It was David's commitment. Mephibosheth did nothing. David's the one that sought him out. It was David's commitment that brought redemption and restoration. And what about sacrifice? We see David sacrifice and we're like, oh man, David, culturally, like you put yourself in this rough spot where everybody's going to judge you and pick on you. And David, you went through so many wars and battles and hardships and being hunted, and everyone hated you and was hunting you, and you've gone through so much to get here. But yet David gets there and he says, I will sacrifice of my plenty. I will sacrifice of what is now rightfully mine, and I will give it back. I will sacrifice my reputation. I will sacrifice my manpower and my servants. But yet that, in comparison to God, what is God's sacrifice to fulfill his commitment? It says, I mean, you guys all know the verse, and we hear it and we like it and we love it and we're like, oh, that's so comforting. Where we go, yeah, God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever would believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Do we understand the sacrifice that went with the commitment that God would have a relationship with us? That he is the pursuer, not us. That he is the committed one, not us. That he is the sacrificer, not us. It's his sacrifice. And who did he sacrifice for? In Romans 5 it says what? That when we were dead in sin, well, as enemies of God, Christ died for us. That's a sacrifice. And this has said that we see in this Old Testament, this idea of this loving kindness, this refuge, this drawing one into himself, is all a picture of God's love, commitment, and sacrifice for us. But here's probably the coolest, whatever, most profound thing about this. Why did David do this? Okay? What was it that spurred on the commitment? What was it that spurred on the sacrifice? This hesed, this loving kindness, is promise-driven. It arises from faithfulness to pledges made earlier. Why was Mephibosheth so safe with David? Not because of Mephibosheth, not because of anything that he had done, not because he had drawn out David's compassion, not because he had done something to merit his concern. His good fortune had nothing whatsoever to do with Mephibosheth. It had everything to do with who? Jonathan. Right from the beginning, he says, I want to show my loving kindness for Jonathan's sake. Now, think about yourself. Think about what I brought up earlier. How can you possibly know when you stand before God that it's going to be okay? How can you know that no matter how much you screw up, no matter how much you stumble, no matter how hard life gets and how rough the circumstances seem, that God is going to love and embrace you and take you as His own? It's because Christ is our Jonathan. Jesus is our Jonathan. It's not for our sake, it's for Christ's sake. Jesus is the one that goes to the Father and says, for my sake, bring them home safely. For my sake, see that they are fully, forever, in all details, abundantly cared for. Jesus says, for my sake, bring them to your table to share with me as joint heirs in the full bounty of your love and presence. Jesus says, Father, for my sake, treat them as you would me. This is a picture, this hesed, of Christ's love for us. Jonathan is the Christ, and the Father's love abounds to us. His refuge encompasses us because of Christ. So regardless of what we do or how often we mess up, it's for Christ's sake that we're loved, saved, that God is committed to us, that He has sacrificed for us. He cannot lie. He cannot break His promises. And you guys, that's the thing that should set us free. 1 John chapter 3 verses 1 and 2 says this, see what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called children of God, and so we are. The reason why the world does not know us, that it did not know Him. Beloved, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet appeared. But we know that when He appears, we shall be like Him, because we shall see Him as He is. And then Romans says this, He who did not spare His own Son, but gave Him up for us all, how will He not also with Him graciously give us all things?